Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
I can knock out a freehand nose at this point, but I don't know if it'll look exactly how I want it to look.
What's happening? Thanks so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. On today's show, I am very excited to welcome my good friend, Nathan McKee. He's an incredible artist. We have a really great talk about art and nostalgia and reproduction of art, and scale and all these other fun, cool things. But Nathan is a rad dude, as you will hear coming up. Today is Thursday, 10/24, almost the end of spooky season. This is it. I hope everybody has their costumes picked out. I hope everybody's gone to a million parties already and has more parties coming up for this weekend. It's a funny one when you get a Halloween in the middle of the week, because then you kind of get the weekends before, usually, or the good spooky parties. I was telling you on the halftime, I went to some fun carved things with the kids. It's always fun. I mean, Halloween's for the kids, right? It's like Wu-Tang. But there's a lot of stuff for adults to do as well. So I hope everybody out there with kids is surviving and having fun and eating all their kids' candy, and everybody without kids is enjoying all the fun and excitement of non-kid Halloween activities that can be had as well. Going down such a rabbit hole here. I haven't really figured out my exact costume. I think there's a good chance I'll be going as Patrick from SpongeBob, or some type of shark. I think there's been a lot of sharks in our Halloween collection for many, many years. A couple years back, we played Halloween here in LA for a festival at the Lodge Room, and I wore one of the shark costumes I used to wear for the kids' birthday parties. My oldest son had an obsession with sharks. So I bought this it was kind of almost like a Katy Perry Left Shark sort of costume, if anyone remembers that. It was, I don't know, what was that now, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? But it was that style of costume, and it was fun. I wore that at the show, and I actually had a really great time. It felt like I was like my persona. I could be the big left shark on guitar. So maybe I'll do that again. That'll be fun. Yeah, No Age is also playing again this year on Halloween, which is super exciting at an awesome venue in Venice, California called what's it called? The Venice West, I think is what it's called. And we're playing Halloween night. So if you want, you can go get your tickets ahead of time. It'll be super fun. Come see No Age at Venice West in Venice, California, out there by the beach. If you're on the west side and you're looking for something to do, something fun this Halloween, come out, buy tickets. I got the link in my in the No Age Instagram. It's hello. What is No? Is it just No Age LA is the Instagram for No Age. No Age LA on Instagram. You can find the link there in the bio. Buy some tickets. Come see us on Halloween night. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I also want to, I want to say thank you to DistroKid. Remember DistroKid /VIP/hyphenate to get a discount on getting your music up online to all the streamers everywhere. Also want to give a shout out to Audioscape. They are an incredible company that makes great stuff, and they're still cleaning out their warehouse and their offices from the crazy flood and everything that happened there in Florida. They were hit pretty hard with that. So if you can, go to audio-scape.com and buy a plugin bundle. I think they had a deal going there where you buy $100 of plugins and you get a $100 coupon off of any physical 19-inch rack gear. They make incredible rack gear. My voice right now is going through their Opto compressor, which is an LA2A optical style compressor, And they have all kinds of great stuff. I have an 1176 they do, and then an EQP, like a Pultec style EQ, which I don't have running on my voice right now, but I use it a lot in mixes and mixing when I am tracking bands or my own projects and things, and also running it on the mix. So they're a great company, Audioscape Engineering, and that is audio-scape.com. Go check them out. They're incredible. If you are a tinkerer and a nerd and a music person and a recording person, producer person, you need to know Audioscape Engineering. They're rad dudes. All right, let's go to my interview with Mr. Nathan McKee, phoning in all the way from Portland, Oregon. But wait, there's more. Nathan wrote me after the interview to let me know there's more stuff going on than we even talked about in the interview. He has a new small press that will be releasing art zines under the name Small Time Press. And the first issue is coming out this winter, focusing on art and records that influence the artists involved. Some of the people involved are Russ Pope, High Dutch, Rich Jacobs, Hisham Barucha, just to name a few. So that is Small Time Press. And they're going to be doing cool art zines. They'll be coming out this winter, featuring all kinds of rad, cool visual artists talking about their influences and things that stoked them out. And then he also has an incredible art festival in Portland, Oregon, at an old defunct mall every year called Mallrats, and that's coming up on December 21st. This is something you do not want to miss if you are in the Portland area, the greater Pacific Northwest area, and you will be near Portland this winter, December 21st. Go to Mallrats. You can find out more on Nathan's channels here. You can follow Nathan at Nathan_McKee_art, and that's McKee with MCKEE. So Nathan_McKee_art. That's on Instagram. He also has an incredible website, NathanMcKee.com. That is NathanMcKee.com. And he also talks about it in the interview a little bit. You can go to byolympia.com. That's BUY Olympia, OLYMPIA.com. Byolympia is an awesome website for creators and crafters and makers and all good people making all good stuff, and it supports the arts there in the Pacific Northwest area. So you can go to Byolympia. You can find Nathan's designs and his prints there, but also tons of other great prints from tons of great artists. So go to byolympia.com, go to nathanmckee.com, find Nathan on the Instagrams, Nathan_McKee_art, and pick up Small Time Press. There's zines coming out this winter, and go to Mallrats in Portland on December 21st. All right, now on to the interview. Dude, Nathan, thanks so much for jumping on the mics. How's it going?
It's good, man. It's awesome. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Ooh, what are you cracking open? You got a tall boy there?
Seltzer water.
I just got this. It's not. Yeah. Oh, there you go. I got a Dr. Pepper's cream with zero sugar. That's my big excitement.
How's that?
It's not a sponsor. Chemically and weird and fun, and it's got caffeine in it. I definitely need it. By 7:30, I'm dragging. I'm ready to go to bed like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I always think that I'll have once the kid goes to bed, that I'll have all the time in the world all night to get everything done.
Yes.
And then by 9 o'clock, I'm I can't do anything. I'm so tired.
Yeah. That's the best lie we tell ourselves. Oh no, okay, once the kids are asleep, then I'll do all the work I didn't have time to do today. And then it comes around, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you're like, who was that guy that said I was going to do all the work? The old me didn't know, tired me now. I can't do anything. I love that. Well, I've restarted the first, I've restarted a book so many times in the last, 10 years. I read the first chapter, the first introduction, the first couple pages, and it's who am I kidding? I'm really not going to get this thing done. One day I will become a reader again.
It'll when they're grown.
Yeah. I used to read for fun all the time. I thought that was, there's nothing better than getting a new book. I'm cool, I'm going to dig into this thing and, finish it up, and nope.
Yeah, my wife is she's a super reader, and she hasn't read a book in since he was born. It's just that's off the table for a while. Now it's just phone time and zombie in front of the TV or trying to get work done.
Yeah, yeah, no, I feel it. Well, it's the thing too is even like watching good movies or good TV. I'm like, I only have about 10 minutes, maybe 20, so before from when what my head go to lay down or go to watch something until I'm just totally passed out. So it's like
Totally.
I don't want anything heavy. I don't want anything dark or dramatic. Or my wife loves watching the murder shows. I just call them her murder shows, whatever. Nicole Kidman and somebody good looking killed somebody else, and like
Yeah,
no, I can't.
somebody dies.
I can't do it. I only got 20 minutes. I need like a laser or a superhero, a ninja of some kind or a monster maybe. I got about that much intellectual brain cells going, and I'm done.
Yeah, we're lagging right now. Usually come October in the past, it's been like we try to do a different horror movie every single night.
Oh yeah.
But we haven't even like we haven't even cracked, like it's like nope, that's not happening.
Yeah, but it'll come back.
We'll
I know we did. What did we do last year? We watched. I showed my wife Halloween 3. She had never seen that. And
nice.
That's the Season of the Witch. That's the one without Michael Myers and like the shamrock, the masks and everything. That was like the perfect, just scary enough, not really scary, but just spooky and weird enough. And she didn't see it, so it's always fun to watch those kind of films with somebody who hasn't seen them because you get to see the surprise. Yeah. The surprises are coming. You're like, oh, she's like, this is so weird. I was like, it gets weirder. Just wait, it'll get a lot weirder.
Yeah. See, my wife's like, she's 8 years younger than me, so we have that sweet spot of like. I'm like, oh, you've never seen this movie? And she's like, yeah, I've never seen that one. But then it's like we watch it. She's like, that was insane. Yeah. I'm like, I know it's good, right?
There was a reason for it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's funny. Yeah, my wife used to make fun of me. She would call it the Randy Randall Film School, when we were first dating. Yeah. She's like, oh, okay, what are you going to show me now? I'm like, well, I'm not trying to be a nerd or a snob or anything. We should watch fun stuff. Like, I'm not, it's I'm not too highfalutin. For a while, she was taking a screenwriting class, and then she got me enrolled in it too, and it was fun, just kind of like looking through stuff as from a writing perspective. I was like, I think some of the best, like one of the best constructed scripts or best constructed films is like Happy Gilmore. It's there's clear intention. The characters are clearly defined. Everything. You get what it does and all the plant and payoffs and everything. I was like, this is Happy Gilmore works if you like break it down as a script. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. It's similar to like the Muppet movies or anything. It's like he has to save his grandma's house. He's he's a fish out of water who has a plan and a ticking time clock, and what I mean, and a bad guy, and a foe. It's like it all works. All the like, if you wanted
the formula
to see
is there.
Yeah, if you wanted to see what elements of a screenplay, what's satisfying, what the elements you need to create a satisfying story structure. That's all in Happy Gilmore.
Yeah,
it's perfect. Yeah. Anyway, awesome. yeah. We could meander about all this stuff, but dude. I'm excited that you'd hit me up and we were talking about you coming on. I've been a fan for a while just from seeing the artwork, but I don't really know your story. Where did you get started, and how did collage and art come into your life?
I mean, art, has always been in my world since I was little, as far as like just wanting to like, just make stuff.
Yeah.
And then once I feel like it's really the same story as everybody else who's our age that's into this music and into this art world and into like whatever. It's like it all stemmed from skateboarding or having an older brother. And they like influenced me completely with like, oh, have you heard this tape? And it's like, no, but now I do. It's like the same thing. So it's like basically same story. It all came from like buying albums and reading Thrasher magazine and seeing like Pusshead and Robert Williams and like all these crazy artists where you're just like, this is insane, and then getting old enough where you like actually start to wrap your head around it and get into it. But the collage work, I went to college. I went to PNCA for like a year.
What's that?
And I took screen. It's a Pacific Northwest College of Art. Okay. In Portland. I'm from Portland. I'm born and raised in Portland, so I grew up here. And I just took 1 year of screen printing, block printing, and I just was really into like just that style of art and the way that it like you could just layer stuff on top of each other. And so then I ended up moving to Chicago when I was 21 and I got really into stencil art, like cutting it out and like kind of same idea as screen printing. I just got really into stencils and stuff. And then I realized that in Chicago it gets really cold in the winter. And so you can't do anything outside. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to spray paint. So I got to figure out a new process to like make this work indoors where I'm warm. So it just that's kind of like was the jump into like, oh, collage, and like you can layer different colors of paper and get the same, like same style that I wanted to get from a screen print or a block print or a stencil. I was like, so it just kind of like I was able to break it down in that. And then once I started doing that, it just kind of took off. I was like, oh, I really like the way this looks. And it's like easy. And it kind of reminds me of like being a kid, you're just playing with glue sticks and, and like paper and scissors and,
Well, I mean, yeah, your humility shines through. I mean, it's not just collage and paper and glue. I mean, you make these highly detailed, intricate art pieces. That ultimately I didn't even realize that it was paper. I think when we were working on the mural project, I was like, well, this is a painting, or this is graphic design in some kind of way. And
yeah,
like, oh, dude, it's all paper and scissors. I was like, oh shit, okay. I had no idea, because you get tonality and depth and even 3-dimensionality in some ways, or what I mean, that there's a lot of visual art principles that go into this thing that I haven't really seen necessarily in collage in such a way, where I usually think of collage a lot of times just being on a 2-dimensional plane, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's a hard translation, I mean, especially through, the COVID world and stuff where everything just went all online. It's like trying to like show my process, but through like a app, like Instagram or something. It's like you really need to see it in person to like really wrap your head around it. Like I just got so many people that were just they instantly think it's like a like InDesign or Vector or like some sort of like Photoshop, which is hilarious because I don't know how to use any of that. Like it's like seriously,
like, this is way harder than that. Trust me, this is so much harder.
Well, I'm like, to me, I'm like, this is way easier. I'm like, I want to move this from here to here. I can do that, like on a computer. I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but yeah, like the so many people would hit me up online and stuff, just being like, oh, I love your paintings, or I love your your graphic that you created in Photoshop or whatnot. And it's just always so frustrating because I'm like, oh yeah, you need to see it in person to kind of wrap your head like, and then even when people see it in person, it's like, once you get close, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like different layers. There's texture. So
I mean, it's almost like paper sculpture. I think it would almost be a better description, or another type of description. Collage again is I think we all kind of think of collage as the stuff we did as kids, or collage is almost betrays the intricacy, and then as well as just the artistic intention behind a lot of the choices and colored form that goes.
Well, it's funny, because I feel like when I think of collage, I just think I've always thought of collage as being like, oh, you're cutting pictures out of magazines and you're creating these new images. And most of the people that I know that do that type of work call it collage. And they're like, oh, you should, come collage with us. And I'm like, man, I can't do that.
This is not that kind of process.
Yeah. And I've always like, I don't know if it's the right word, but people are always like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, it's like, it's a paper cut. I don't know if that's, and I'm like, I'm cutting paper and layering it. It's like, but when people call it collage, I'm like, I guess it is collage. Like it's technically like, paper and glue, and you're just kind of like creating your images from it. But I never thought of it as being collage until other people started being like, oh yeah, you do collage.
And it's also, I mean, it's very figurative as well. I mean, it's, there's not necessarily narrative, but in some ways, yes, the reproductions or storytelling, or, it's representational, I guess I should say, where even a lot in the collage world it can kind of be surrealistic or sort of abstract in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Well. Like,
yeah. I mean, a lot of, obviously like a lot of my subject matter kind of just comes into my interest, whether it's skateboarding or surfing or music. I mean, just all these things that have played, or movies like what we were just talking about. Like, it's like, I mean, it's funny because I feel like I tend to look back at those, like most people do, like the nostalgia of like, you know, taking in all the like movies that you watch when you're a kid and getting the same feeling, you know, from it when you like I feel like whenever I make something, if I look at it like an album cover or something, if I'm replicating an image that really hit me when I was younger, it's like I get the same feel from it when I get to see it. And then I like, if I show it to other people, it's awesome to get their feeling from it. Like they can tell me their story or relationship to like whatever image I'm building or whatever movie I'm showing, or it's like it's just a good interaction of when you can share it with somebody in person, they can kind of like tell you what they get from it, because I know what
Right.
I get from it, like making something that I had a memory from when I was little or something, and then I like to get where what memory they took from it.
Yeah, it's always like the conversation starter or almost curation of culture through through re-expression or in some ways there's definitely a curatorial aspect of the subject matter that you depict and sort of in the time
Hmm.
period and sort of where a point of view, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. I mean, I feel like obviously, yeah. I mean, I grew up in the '80s, so a lot of my stuff stems from like stuff that I loved growing up, like in the '80s. So
right, but it's I mean yeah, but there's more to it than just that. I mean, um,
sure.
yeah, I mean I was trying. I had on Daniel Ephraim, who did the book about Steve Keen, and I think almost in that kind of way too, where where Steve Keen will have a series or a project of recreating album cover art. You know,
Hmm.
there's some crossover in that regard too, but it's again it's like filtering is not the right word. So my brain's kind of cloudier than I'd like it to be. Just dad
Given
brain this
right.
time of night,
Yeah.
but there's that feeling of like I always think about it like in music terms because that's sort of my main medium or where I
Hmm.
come through quickest is like doing like a cover of a song. Like I'm going to interpret this song, and even if I tried my best for it to sound exactly the way I hear it, it's going to come out sounding different. There's some part of me that is infused into that my version of the song, even if I'm not trying
Totally.
consciously or trying to put a spin on it. It's just through my ears into my head and back to my hands in a recreation sort of fashion. It's going to sound different. And ultimately, what it's almost the best way to measure what is you, like who you are, is that difference between the original and your version of it. That the
Totally.
whatever minute variation there is in there, like that's me. That's what I would call an identity or a stamp or a fingerprint of some sort. I mean, I don't know. Do you
Totally.
ever think about it in that way, or am I
Yeah. I
building
mean,
more into it
a
than
lot.
it is there?
No, no, that's totally like kind of my world of it. It's like nothing I do is going to recreate it perfectly to whatever thing I'm trying to like work with, like if it's a photo or just like an album cover or something. But I always like to think about it like especially with something like that I hold so dearly, like a record or a photo or whatever it is, a movie cover. um I always like to look at it as like, oh, this is me. I'm like collaborating with them right now. It's like,
Oh,
oh, I
right.
get to like be involved with this thing, and like be part of it, and it's like whatever you put out there, obviously it's like the goal is not to make it look exactly like to replicate it, like a cover
Sure.
song or something. So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I always look at it as like a collaboration,
It's a great,
whether they know it or not.
but I think that's so much a form of storytelling or that kind of way of like cultural, cultural like conversation. You know what I mean? It's a lot of when like that's how I learned about a lot of music too. Is rather through either through interviews or even just covers. If a band that I liked covered another artist's song, like oh well, who's
Hmm.
this?
Hmm.
This is an influence on them, and then you kind of you pull the threads or go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, about
Totally.
these influences. And if it's like oh okay, well if it influenced one of my favorite artists, then it's something I should know about as well. And I imagine there's
Totally.
something I mean, you serve as that breadcrumb trail, to quote a Slint song, but it's that
Yeah.
style of like here we I'm going to lay out where I came from and represent it,
Totally.
if not directly, but also, because I think that's the other funny part of it too. I always feel as a musician, it's like there's some records or some artists or movements in music that I feel is just part of my DNA. Like when someone's like, "Oh, do you like this band, or do you want to hear this? Do you want to hear the Sonic Youth record?" It's like I feel like I ate that for lunch every day for 10 years. Like I don't think I could ever listen to it again because I just have internalized it to such a degree. Or if people say, "I hear this kind of thing in your music," like, "Oh, really? Oh, I wonder why that is." It's like it's like you almost train at least from a music, again, just kind of from a music sense of that. It's like I would train myself to that, or to accomplish sounds like a My Bloody Valentine or something, and then at some point then you have to erase all the lines. You have to then erase your work to not show like your back kind of thing. But it's where other times it's nice, like, "Oh yeah, here's what it is."
Yeah, totally.
You can't already hear it. I'm going to hit you on the head with a hammer and show you this is what I like.
Yeah, I mean,
it's important.
I think like most of the stuff that I make, like again, like I have like a tight connection with it. So it's like when other people see it and we can have that conversation about that album, or same thing, whether it's an old landmark in a neighborhood that I loved when I was a kid. It's like being able to connect with people that have the same, like they're like, "Oh, I remember that place." And then like it's all about like creating dialogue. It's like having like an art show or something where I can show pieces. Like all I want to do is just listen to other people's stories about like the same places, just because I'm like, I know my story behind it. It's like I know why I made it, but I want to know why you like it, and it's like, I mean, that's the coolest part. Like, I mean, that's like the coolest part of like, doing more in-person events now, now that COVID's I mean, it's obviously still here, but it's like settled down more where people were able to do in person, probably with you with doing shows and stuff. It's like, it's like just getting in front of humans again and having that, dialogue is just like, I missed it so much, it's like, I feel like we got so tied up in like this like phone interaction for so long that you don't get the real reaction to your work,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I just think that my stuff is like, especially needs that, at least for me, it's like, I need that people telling me their stories of why they like it. Just not because I'm like, "Oh, you need to like my stuff," but more just like, I need to know like your story. Like, what's your connection to this image? Like, why do you like this? So
that's
cool.
incredible.
I mean, I'm assuming, yeah.
Well, and there's something too. I mean, in the nature of your work, in the color and the kind of the shape that you work in, that I think is probably dictated by the parameters of the medium, but also just chosen through your own point of view. There's almost an illustrative kind of thing, or a whimsy, or something almost childlike in some ways, of seeing something reduced into this sort of flattened, if it's a photo or a record cover or something else. And then there's a representation in a minimalist, design interpretation of it that I think represents that like connection to this thing in a almost primal or like circuit bending sort of way. Like, oh yeah, that's just like how much reduction can be placed on something that's so iconographic. I think in an Andy Warhol school of reproduction and silk screening and that type of thing. I mean, where he was looking at 50s film culture, or even his contemporary sort of pop culture as references. You're pulling from skateboarding, hip hop, basketball. We're pulling your iconic things in there. But I mean, do you often think about that? Like, is there ever a question in your process of like, how many lines go into this face? Or do you, at what point of resolution, is that a strange one? But you know what I mean? Like, how do you represent something as simple as possible without overdoing it or underdoing it?
I think that's the, when doing something like that, where it's like a portrait or something, it's like, I really have to know the subject to like, to like, I mean, you only can capture so much stuff when it's so flat, like you were saying,
right.
it's like knowing, like what defines like a person or whatever you're working on. It's like, what can you pull that will be that thing that really like ties it all together, whether it is like, oh, that person usually has like, it's like, oh, they always have this like line on their forehead, or like that certain dimple, or like, that certain, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, I feel like when it comes down to breaking an image down to like simple just paper layers, trying to like translate it, it's like you need to have those specific things that really like dial it in, I guess. It's like again, like with a portrait or something, it's like I almost have to know the person to do a portrait of them,
Mm-hmm.
because I need to know their like certain mannerisms, or else it just looks so flat. It's like, how do you bring character like something so flat? So it's like I feel
Yeah.
like if I work like I always, I mean, one of the main characters, especially in basketball, that I usually work with is Rasheed Wallace, because he's so he's got so much expression that he's really easy to capture with like paper. Because you can just do like one of his weird like facial expressions and people know exactly who it is. Even if you do like a totally like wild like impression of him, like on paper, it's like if you can like take a little bit of his personality and show it, like people know exactly who it is, even if it doesn't even look like him.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, you definitely, I have to know I guess I have to know what I'm working on to be able to make it really work. Because I've tried to like, if you get a commission or something and somebody's like,
Oh God.
"Hey
Yeah.
man, can you do this thing of my dog or something?" And you're like, "I can't, because I don't know your
uh,
dog and it's just going to look like a dog." Like I can't
yeah.
do it. So, yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, it's really something too. I mean, forgive me for my ignorance, but have you gone into animation with any of your designs? It looks like something that often, and maybe that's just me misrepresenting it or misreading it as something that would be done on
No, it
computers. But I
would
mean,
work
is there?
really well.
Yeah.
I have worked with a handful of people and done animations, and I love it. Like it makes, people always are like, that's like one of the biggest things I always get in person from people that are just kind of like randos that are come up and they're like, "Oh, it's like South Park."
Oh,
Like, 'cause I guess
right.
South Park started as like paper cuts.
Yeah.
Like I guess it was like very simple, like, and so it's like I like seeing it animated. It's like, yeah, it's really cool. Like I've worked with a couple people and it works really well, because you can just, the same thing. It's like you can just move an eyebrow or move something and it like, yeah, it works really well. So
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
I've done
There.
it a couple times.
But again, just talk about labor intensive processing. That's like, can you make one of those? Great. Now, can you make 32 of those a second? So we're gonna do.
Yeah,
Now we're gonna
exactly.
need 10,000 of these. Like, oh wait, hold on. Like the one took
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Like
I
yeah,
mean, like different cells of it or something. It's like, I
yeah,
don't know. I feel like because my stuff's so flat, it works really well with just being a very simple animation. Like it doesn't have to be
sure,
like super fluid. Like
right, right.
you can just move, you can just like make something kind of like go across the screen and it works, and just
Or
like kind of
yeah,
like move an eye up and down or,
or even as
but it's
backgrounds.
definitely,
If you was a collaboration with another animator, the thing where
yeah,
some of your backgrounds are so realistic for being
totally.
paper cuts, but they look great. Like I could see that being, but more of a collaborative effort rather than just taking it
Yeah.
all
It's
on.
always
Yeah,
been something that like I want to like be able to take it there. Like I want to be able to learn animation, because I think you could do some really, really cool stuff, but it's all time at this point. It's
right.
just
Yeah,
like
like
people
everything.
that are really good at it. It's like, they've been putting so much time and effort into it. I'm just like, man, that just seems like a lot of work to try and learn something like that.
Yeah. Well, and it comes at different points in your career too, where you're like, wait, now am I going to go back? Can I go backwards, or can
Totally.
I like add this whole other like discipline onto something that I've worked so hard to get to this point of it? Like, it really does. I would imagine there's a bit of starting back from zero. I love the wood cuts and the cuts though too. There is like the three dimensionality in those. Like, how did you start
Yeah. I
doing
mean,
those?
that's like kind of my newer thing is like, it's like you kind of like, at least for me, it's like you're kind of limited with paper, kind of like what you were saying earlier. It's
Mhm.
like, which is cool, like, because you're limited to the colors or like what paper is out there, and you only can go so big with it, because it's like I've tried to do like really big pieces of cut paper, and it's like it can get really messy really fast,
Oh yeah.
like, and just stuff falling off and frustrating. So like the woodcuts, basically the woodcuts, and then the murals, doing
Oh yeah.
murals and trying to translate, like, I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's like I still will cut everything out of paper, and then trying to translate it into like a sculpture or make it more of like a 3D object. It's still like modeled after like a cut piece of paper, you know? So it's like, but it allows me to like try and go bigger. Like I want to make like a sculpture or something that's like life size, you know, like, and I've always been
Yeah.
trying to like make it even bigger, but it's just, again, it's just time and resources, you know, like
Of
the
course.
bigger you
Right.
go,
Yeah.
the more money it costs and the more space you need. Like, I don't know. It's kind of it, but I mean, it's there. I want to do it. Like, it's just getting the means to be able to do it. But making the small ones is super fun. You know, it's like, again, it's just like breaking it down to its simplest form of just layered wood, you know, and just painting it and kind of just creating like a thicker paper and being able to do the same thing that I've been doing, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
same thing with
imagine.
murals too. It's like the mural project, you know, where we
Yeah.
met, like it kind of being able to like translate like this small paper cut I do into like a large wall is it's so cool. And like trying to figure out how to make it work so you can actually kind of see it, you know? It's wild.
Yeah, and I mean, and coming from paper cut background, but then translating into paint, like is that? I mean, that's a whole other. I mean, I know when you were there, working on the
Yeah.
mural, like it's, but you don't come from painting, so I mean, how do you find it? It's I know you have help
It's
as you're doing it, but it's kind of just tracing it on there, like blowing it up,
yeah,
and then tracing, and then just fill. Is it color by numbers kind of thing at that point, or?
kind of. Yeah. I mean it really is, but it's crazy because you know with paper cuts everything is so straight. You know, like I
Mm,
can use a razor blade and everything is so sharp and like clean
yep.
looking. But then once you break into like paint, you know, it's like
On a bumpy
in my
wall,
brain, I'm like,
on a
yeah,
yeah.
oh man, it's like you think that
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I could do this. Like, how hard could it be? But then you like start doing it, and you're like, oh, it could be really hard. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Well, and
but
especially
it can,
to scale too, like where a 1 inch cut, on it with an X-Acto blade on a piece of paper can be done in a breath. You just
yeah,
it's done, and then now you translate that. Now you have this 4 foot straight line that literally took you
totally.
1 second to cut, and now you're translating it on paper on a rough surface.
Yeah, and then
And
trying to
it's like,
make it as straight as a you know cut. Luckily, I mean, luckily with the painting stuff, being around so many people that are so good at it to give you pointers.
oh,
Like, I mean, when we did the mural project, it was like being surrounded by people that are like so good at what they do and able to
oh
give
my
you
god.
pointers. And like, I learned so much. Like, I went in blind and left being like, oh yeah, like
I mean,
like I
it's
feel like I'm pretty good at this now.
really a master class, and you know what I mean. If like to be around that level of mural artists or just artists who do murals, I guess I could even
Yeah.
say. You know what I mean? Like James Jean was
Oh,
insane.
geez.
I mean, I didn't even know what he was doing for half the time, and he had such a huge group, and it was so well thought out, and it's incredible
It's
form.
like, yeah, I mean, props to all that, to people that can do that really well. Like, I mean, I can't even like just doing like this small, you know, like 12 by 12 foot wall that I worked on, you know, it was an eye opener. So somebody who can do like a whole building or something, it's just
Yeah.
a
12
whole
feet by
nother
12
level.
feet is not small. In human scale,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
very large. Yeah, that's a
but
big one.
compared
Yeah.
to most people's stuff, it's just, yeah, I can't even imagine. But it's so fun. I mean, another big thing with me is like I don't have a lot of patience.
Mm.
So I feel like doing the paper cuts and even painting now, it like forces me to slow down. You know, it's like because you can mess stuff up so fast if you don't slow down.
Yeah.
So it almost is like by doing it, it kind of teaches me patience and being able to be like, all right, you know, you have to slow down because if not, you're going to mess this whole thing up. You know,
Yeah.
which is that's a big thing that I get out of it now is just like, you know, I mean, it's probably like a lot. I'm gonna keep saying this. It's probably like writing a song. You know,
Sure,
like
and I'll just
it's
keep agreeing. Yeah, sure, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
it's just like if once you get into your zone, like you're in your zone. You know, and I feel like
Yeah.
whether I'm painting or paper cuts or whatever I'm working on, it like it forces me to like focus fully on it because, like I said, you can mess it up so fast. You know,
Oh my god.
so
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. Yeah, I love. There was an analogy that Seinfeld used when he was talking about making his TV show. That it was like sprinting with an egg on a spoon. Like it, and every second there's an opportunity for the whole thing to just go badly, to
Totally.
end very, very messy. And I think there's so much any creative process, I think can be attributed to something like that, where you have to go very quickly, and at any point can it just all be turned to shit so fast. But you can't. But the job is to run very fast with this very fragile thing. And if you went slower, you would lose. And if you mess up or anybody distracts you, you lose too. I think there's just so much of that sort of thing. The fact that anything good ever gets made ever is just, it's a lot of repetition and skill. There's a craft to that. If you more times you do it, you can just get better at it. And then you just wait for those moments of inspiration or something to strike, then now you have your skill set in place. So okay, I can do this.
Once you complete it, it's like once the completion process too, it's like once it's done, it's yes, I did. I mean, that's
I mean, have you?
No matter what.
I mean, you must have chopped up your fingers so many times. Have you gotten stitches over in your fingers? Like
chop. No, luckily, not yet. But definitely, just like same thing. It's just like dad brain or whatever. You get so focused that like I've done the dumbest stuff, like that you don't even think about. Like you're like cutting stuff, and then you're like, oh, I got an itch on my face, and you go to scratch your face with like a razor blade or something. It's like, what are you doing? What are you, like, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should stop for the day or whatnot. But yeah, luckily, no major, wounds or anything. More just frustration of not slowing down and maybe cutting something too much, and then just like being like, ugh,
start again.
I got to start completely over. I have to do a million noses or a million eyes. Like,
But again, that's repetition. I'm sure that there's those 10,000 hours of like getting at it.
Yeah.
I mean, where most people are like, how do you cut a nose? Like you've done so many, you probably could in your sleep.
Well, again, it kind of goes back. It's so funny. It's like, it depends on the nose. It's like, that's right. Like somebody's like, you cut out a nose. It's like somebody's nose can show the whole, like, it really can like paint the picture of the person. It's like if you mess up the nose, it's like that does not look like who you're trying to do.
You ruined it.
Like
it's amazing. And then what about big sneezes, like before things are glued down? Have you ever had like just it's all just tiny pieces of paper that sit there, a wind blows by, a breeze, something happens, someone turns a fan on, and just confetti?
Man, yeah. Sometimes like working with stuff that's like, so like, again, it's like when you cut out an eyeball, it's like, this big, and you're trying to glue it on, and it just, you're like, where did it go? Like where, like what happened? And then like later you find it like stuck to your elbow or like whatever, it's, again, it's just, it forces you to slow down. And that's like my main takeaway is like, you can't do any of this stuff fast. It's nice. So.
Yeah, there's a process in place. As it gets cut, it gets glued, it gets put down.
Yeah,
and then even the lifespan of these pieces. I mean, I guess once it's pressed or it's framed, do you have some kind of like longevity to it, or how often? Do you find things go awry in the long term? Of pieces.
I've been doing it long enough now that like I definitely like can backtrack and see how stuff's still doing after years and years, and it's insane. Like I remember when I first started doing it, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is like a fun thing, and then you'd have an art show or something and people would buy stuff. And then like, later a year, 2 years later, you'd realize it's like, oh shit, like I should have used archival acid-free paper or something, and like, it's like, do you still have that piece? And they show it to you and it's like a white piece of paper. Like it's totally
melted, just bleached out. Yeah.
So I definitely have learned plenty of lessons of like, throughout the years of like, oh yeah, this glue stick, like a year later, anywhere that there's extra glue, there's like a white smudge all over stuff, or like, so
you wouldn't know from doing it for so long. You just wouldn't know we were testing this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, trying to like talk to other people that have done it and get their opinions on stuff. It's half the people I talk to, like, I'm just winging it, man. Like, I don't know what, like, hopefully this stuff works out. Like, it looks really good right now, but it's like 2 years down the line, it's like, might have like a giant bubble in it, but that's just art, right? Like, I mean, I feel like anything you make, it's like, it's only going to last as long as it's supposed to last. I mean, eventually it'll disintegrate and be gone, but it's like, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's the selfish part of me is like I'm all in it for the process and just making stuff, and then after it's gone, I'm like, I don't know. I hope it lasts. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's no guarantees.
It's so funny. I mean, I guess that's kind of the blessing and the curse too. I guess just to keep drawing the parallels back to music, where it's like, you know, I've recorded songs where I've maybe only played it a handful of times. Maybe we just wrote this song or just wrote this riff, and and we commit it to the, vinyl or digital whatever. We record it for posterity. That will be the version of that song, and I've only played
Mhm.
it a handful of times. I just wrote it, just thought of it, and then fast forward 5 years, where we've had the good fortune to be able to play that song hundreds of times, and that version of the song I think is
Yeah,
really good. But everybody, with the people who've come to the show are expecting to hear it's about half as slow and clunkier. Some
yeah,
of the riffs I was like, oh,
totally.
like I kicked myself like, oh, how I did that? I should have done more work on that. Why was that the take that's on the record? You know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, do you do that? Do you do that? I mean, you've been doing this long enough. Do you go back to your older like bands even that you're just like, oof, man,
Not
or do
not
you?
as not as much. No, I mean I think it's mostly um, what the takeaway from that after the first couple of records was, if we're going to go make a record, let's go tour the songs or let's play the songs live as much as possible prior to going in the
Mhm,
studio, because the performing live really just it tells you so much about the song, that you wouldn't
totally.
notice, because when it's just, especially for us, we were as a duo in No Age, it's it's if the two of us like it. All right, we're not really looking at it from all corners. We're not really analyzing it. We're making the synthesis is more important than the critical eye to it. But then once it gets put up on its feet and played in front of a group of people, they'll tell you what they think of it.
Yeah,
Or you'll feel it, or you'll know, like, the part that you think is going to be the big part, it all kind of just fell flat, or the part that you didn't, that you thought was too short, needs to be longer. Like, oh, it felt like we really rushed through it. Like it was gone. The audience was still with us. We could probably extend these. Or, you know what I mean? Again, it's that dialogue, right, with your audience in that way that,
yeah,
you can't replicate that, because it informs not only the content, but also just sort of it can inform the intention, because if the idea is to communicate an idea or a feeling, you think you know what you're saying, but again, your skill set can be developing still in a way that if it's not tested, it's like, do you understand the words I'm saying? You're like, no, I think you need to go back to the drawing board. Okay, let me rewrite this speech enough times until the message and the intent is clearer. Not that the intent
yeah,
has ever changed, but the skill of communication is such that the first time you say something might not be right. Like, can I say this again? Hold on, let me take it back. What I really meant to say was this. And I think that's the same in
yeah,
any art form, right? Whether it's a song or a piece of visual media as well. It's like, my intention was to do this thing that really captured the spark of the feeling I had about this record or this time or place. But
hmm,
it might just, like you said, a nose, or it could be something that's just off. The skill might not be there.
totally.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting, because I think I rarely have a conscious thought about that. You know what I mean? In terms, because I think I can always get so wrapped up in the feeling of, like, I just made a thing, and I think it's like any artist. It's now as a parent too.
Yeah,
You see, it's like, look, I made this thing. Like, you get excited, like, and you don't want to be too too analytic about it, because then that can diminish the freshness of the new thing. But with years of working on something, you have to
yeah,
have both. You have to be the excited kid who's just going to go off and make a big mess, and the thoughtful parent who knows, like, okay, that's good. Now let's clean it up a little bit. Let's make this make sense. I don't know. Does that happen in terms of your editing,
oh
or like?
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you: do you start with sketches, or do you, like, how do you
It
work
kind of
before you start
depends.
cutting? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. I usually will draw I mean, that's the other thing with painting and doing paper cuts is like I like to draw, but I don't feel like I'm good at drawing.
Mm,
But I can draw well enough to like create a template to turn it into paper. And then like
yeah.
the paper image, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's like I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. Basically, yeah, like I everything starts as a drawing,
Okay.
so it's like whether, yeah, I mean, everything has composition and creation from it, and then I can tweak it and like, but yeah, everything starts basically as a drawing for a template, and then I can break it down to like colors and layers and whatnot.
Almost like a
But
tattoo, sort of like a stencil in some ways. Like here's our just sort of the parameters, the drawing boards with minus
totally,
value or shading or any of these types of things. But here's just the general shaping of the composition of the piece.
totally. I mean, it also depends too. I mean, it also helps with like the sizing. Like I always thought about it. It's funny, like before I started doing this, I was like, oh, is this cheating? Like when you draw something out and then you trace it, like you
Right.
blow it up really big
Sure.
and then trace it to like, because you're like, oh, I want to make this tiny drawing, but I want to make a big painting. Like I was in my brain, I thought that every artist just did it freehand,
Oh, right.
and that was just like their skill, that they could just do, what, like a mural or something. Like before I did murals, I was like, man, how do people do this? And then like, you go and you're like, everybody's got projectors and they're projecting on the wall, and like, I'm like, oh no shit, like this totally makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
like I think I just assumed that everybody was doing these crazy big things that I could never do, But anyway, to go back to it, so everything starts as a drawing. I break it down, and then I need some sort of template. It's like cutting freehand would be really difficult for me for a full piece. Like we were saying earlier, it's like I can knock out a freehand nose at this point, but like, I don't know if it'll look exactly how I want it to look. But I can do it 100 times, and eventually it'll happen.
That's so wild. Tell me about some of the collaborations you've done. I know you've done, skate decks and other art, but tell me how that's come about and how that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I've been really lucky with people just seeing what I do and being interested in it. So I've never really had to like go out for a collaboration. Like usually people will approach me and be like, hey, I really like your style and I want to do this thing. So I've been so fortunate in that way that like it, like my mind's kind of blown that it just continues to happen. But I mean, I think my first one, and I just was talking about it just because Dikembe Mutombo just passed away.
I know.
And that was like my first, like literally like that was my first job that I got from like Adidas, that they were like, hey, and to go back to the animation question, it was like, they're like, hey, we want to do this thing with Dikembe Mutombo. Would you be interested in doing your illustration work and working with an animator and getting Dikembe Mutombo to narrate his story, but through your art? So we made this whole video of Dikembe Mutombo's like career, basically from a little kid in the Congo up, and like,
wow.
Yeah, it was so fun. It was so cool. But yeah, I mean, that was my first time ever getting hired to do a job, and getting paid for something, like getting paid for my art, like in making something and realizing like, oh, this is cool. Like I could do something with this. Like if people want to give me money to do something I already love and be doing anyway, like let's go, let's do this. But I think that was the first big collaboration. And since then, I mean, I started mostly doing basketball art because, growing up in Portland, like we had the Blazers and I grew up with that and I just like gravitated towards basketball. So, I just got really into making like paper cuts, but of, basketball imagery from just players that I really like. Because like I said, you can like, if you pick the right player, you can make them with their expression and you can capture it completely because there's so much energy in it and like, movement and it was just super fun. But, yeah, I ended up like, so I originally, like a lot of my early collaborations were with like basketball oriented stuff, but slowly like I started to get like a little bit more work and more stuff that I'm interested in, like skateboarding and surfing. And I feel like the more, it's kind of the thing, it's like the more stuff you make, like you almost like can force it into an existence, It's like, oh, if I start making a bunch of like skateboard art, like eventually a skateboard company's hopefully is going to see it and they're going to like it. And then they're going to be like, hey, do you want to do a graphic or something, and like, um, so yeah, I feel like the more that I've been doing that, more of my collaborative work has been more oriented in like skateboarding and like, um, album covers and like like swim trunks or like every the skateboard wheels like so it's yeah, again, like I feel like I've been really lucky with like people coming to me because they see the stuff that I'm making, and then wanting to work together. So I've done a lot of really fun stuff with a lot of companies that I really like, you know.
It's incredible.
I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. No,
I'm
totally.
sorry. I feel like I kind of ramble.
No. Are you kidding me? You're perfect for a podcast. That's all this is. It's great. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the goal, right? And kind of coming up, in art and these kind of things, to find a way to make a living from making art. I mean, do you have to take on other jobs still, or has it been something you've been able
I mean,
to?
you do the dance,
Oh,
I mean, I feel like, like I said, like that first Adidas job that I got, like, was a pretty big chunk of money that I was like, holy crap, like this is incredible, and instantly quit my job. I was like, I'm all in, I'm doing this. And then realizing really fast that like, it's not always like that. Yeah. So then it's like, oh shit, I guess I'll crawl back to like my bartending job, and like do that. But then still like, I mean, like I said before, it's kind of, whether I would be getting paid or not, I'd be doing what I do. It's just like making stuff. So, it's ebb and flow, like I'll take on, part-time jobs, service jobs, like just like the easy stuff, but like easy stuff as far as like scheduling goes, it's like, oh, I can leave this job and it's not a big deal. If I get another job, I can take that. But, it's ebb and flow. It's like, sometimes it works really well and I don't have to work for a long time. And sometimes I'm like, holy shit, I have like a 1.5-year-old son that I need to like start paying some bills. So like, luckily enough, I have enough friends, like in the world that are like, hey, if you need some like work for a while or like whatever it is, So right now I've been, I've been working with this like kind of, middle person company called Buy Olympia. It's like, they do like a lot of art prints and art, like artists, like stuff, and they're just kind of like the middleman. But yeah, it's kind of been, that's kind of what I've been doing to fill time in between like freelance gigs.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
I see him here by like BUY Olympia.
Yeah. And they're great. They're such a cool company. They work with so many bands. Like the guy, one of the owners is like, they're both from Olympia and they're part of that Olympia music scene and all that. So like they're on the level and are really cool, and their company's really cool. So it feels like work, but it also doesn't feel like work, and they're flexible. So you can kind of, continue to do, your career outside of that, but you also can pay your bills when you need to.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then have you ever been hit up by, I imagine it would probably be more photographers whose work has been iterated on. I mean, or what is the sort of the legal ramifications of that? I mean, I'm assuming that at some point there's a conversation that has to happen in some regards. How does that usually go?
I mean, it's funny with that stuff because sometimes, I mean, it depends. Like if you're working with like a big company, there's so many rules around it. It's like, you can't use this, you can't use that, you can't use certain colors even, it's
God, right.
But, luckily most of the photographers, I mean, especially in the skateboard world, like everybody's so cool, and it's like, I think a lot of my work that stems for that type of stuff comes from a fan, like I'm a fan of this work, it's like of people's photos and stuff, so it's like, it's kind of rad to be able, again, it kind of goes back to what I'm saying, like when you make something, you're like, oh, I feel like I'm collaborating with this photographer, and it's like, it's kind of come up like, it's like with a bunch of mostly skateboard photographers, where we have collabed, like I don't know if you're familiar with John Humphreys or Bryce Kanights and those guys. They all live in Portland, so like we've done art shows together where like all like they give me an image specifically of their, like a photo that they took. And then they're like, hey, can you do your version of that? And then we'll show them
That's cool.
together. And like, yeah, it's been so fun. Like, again, I just feel like it's
that's
really
the better
lucky.
version of that versus someone saying, hey, I took that
Yeah.
photo. That's my art.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think early on I did a lot more of like, again, I look at it as being like a fan, like I was like, like whatever, like MF Doom or something. I'm like, I love MF Doom, like, but if you're not friends with that person, you need to have some sort of reference, so it's like it's really hard to like just make up something, of in my style. At least it's like I can't just create something, so I need a reference point, and it's like if I don't know the person and can't like take a picture of them or like but early on I feel like I did a lot more of that stuff and probably got away with a lot more than I should have. But now it's like I feel like I've learned to like kind of just create my own imagery, and I'm having a lot more fun with like, it's still, an album cover sometimes, and it's like, well, that definitely, it's like, it is what it is. Like,
it's almost like the bigger the swing you take, the easier it is, just only because it then becomes fair use or can become critique or satire, or there's more protection around going after like an image of like, the president or Madonna or something, or like the biggest things in the world. Because you're like, well, this is just cultural material versus one artist thing of it, or something smaller where it's, obviously you don't want to hurt another artist or infringe on their IP or their livelihood is in any way, but especially not cool music photographers or art skate photographers, those kinds of things. Like the last thing you want to do is be stepping on toes.
Well,
but
and again, it's not like any like I'm definitely not getting rich off other people's imagery. But I do think that a lot of the a lot of those people, like they if they do see what I do and realize how I do it, like they appreciate the process, and they're not like, oh, you're not just taking like a like a copy, like a carbon copy of my photo and putting it on a shirt and being like, this is mine,
putting it on Etsy and like, here's your
work. So luckily, I mean, a lot of I've been totally lucky with a lot of like the stuff that I've done where like the people will actually hit me up and they'll be like, hey, I really like that, or like, that's really cool. Like, can I get a, like a copy of that or something? I'm like, hell yeah, you can. That's amazing. I just had the most amazing interaction with a guy online. Like, you might get a kick out of this, but I did a like the famous gi hanging in the basketball hoop from the Philly show. I made a Christmas ornament. A drawing of that. And a guy just hit me up that he was the guy who put that show on.
Okay.
Like he's the one that threw the show. Yeah. And I guess they're making a book around that image and like how it's influenced all these people and stuff. So he hit me up because he wanted a Christmas ornament to put in the book. But great. I just thought it was so funny. Like it's kind of just goes back to like, luckily enough, like a lot of the people that like are involved with these things, if they see my work, they most of them have been like, oh, this is cool. I like this, and like, can I get that? And it's like, of course you can. Like, you can have whatever you want. I don't care.
I mean, we live in such an interesting time too of just meta textual, cultural sort of snake eating its own tail. I mean, part of me almost thinks too that I'm sure in some frame of reference and for IP law, if you were to take the actual photo and cut it itself, like then that becomes an iteration or a new piece based on, but recreating the thing in a new material is almost seen as like a, like in publishing for song, it's like you're just covering the song versus sampling the song or something, you know what I mean? Where like some of the sample you'd be able to get more clearance in a visual world of it, by saying fair use or becoming something, outside of the rights of it all. It's a strange time, but again, as artists, it's really all you have. I mean, I guess going the other way, have you seen people riffing on your work? I'm sure out in the world, people bring stuff to your attention or things like this. I mean, does that happen too?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff pops up here and there, not too much, but every once in a while, it's like, hey, I made that, and it's like, it ends up in somebody else's feed. But I'm like, again, it's just kind of like, it is what it is, I mean, it all kind
Yeah.
of goes around, it's like,
Yeah.
like nothing to get like upset about by any means, and
Yeah.
if anything, it's like kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like that's cool that it's getting more life out of it. Like hopefully you're not like throwing some brand over the top of it and being like, this is mine.
Right.
But
Whatever.
that's
It's
whatever.
really funny. I think especially in music stuff, I've noticed like the only time people get called out for, really sampling or doing something, flagrant is when the new piece makes a lot of money. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
if there's not a lot of money there, despite whatever the legality of it may be, no one cares. There's no one to go after. There's not, a giant record
Yeah.
label or a giant, artist or management company
Yeah.
to pay out. So most people just let it go. So there is a scale to that kind of stuff. I think where some people are afraid of like, oh, I'm going to get caught or I'm going to do this. And it's like, if you're not making any, but I guess, YouTube and the bots and, you can kind of get flagged on stuff. But again, it's all to scale. Like if your thing isn't, if you're keeping it sort of DIY and low key, chances of it,
I mean, to me, like again, it all comes back to like a lot of, especially a lot of the nostalgia stuff. It's just like, I'm a fan, it's like, I like this, like I like this person. They influenced me in this way. Like, I'm just trying to like, again, it feels like a collaboration. Like, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm working with this person. And then if that person reaches out, it's like, oh, cool. Like, hopefully you're cool. And I can tell you why I made it and like whatever you did meant to me when I was growing up or now, it's like, I mean, that was a cool thing. Like, it's like I've made like Ray Barbie art, and then meeting Ray in California, I'm like, oh, like he's like, oh, he's like, that thing's so cool, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. Like that makes me feel so much better to like, it's just stuff like that, Or I mean, yeah, I don't know. Again, I feel like not so. I feel like if any of that stuff was going to happen where I'd get really in trouble, it would be with the NBA type stuff.
Sure,
just
right?
Because that's so much more like, tight
down.
Yeah, but I feel like luckily in the culture that we're in with skateboarding and music and stuff, like hopefully most of the people are on the level where they understand like you just like you dig what they do and hopefully they dig what you do and maybe then you can work together and make something cool. Like that's happened before too, where it's like you make again you like kind of force it into the world to be like, hey, I made this thing. Hopefully this person sees it and the person sees it and they're like, hey, we should work together and do this thing. And it's like,
yep.
It worked.
the fishing helped. It happened.
Totally.
That's amazing. Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, we have taken up way too much of your time. Where do you want people to find out more about you? Where do you like to direct people to keep in touch with what you're doing and buy your art?
Yeah. I mean, I would say Instagram's a good way if it works for you and you can you see things that people post. But it's just Nathan McKee Art.
Okay.
At Nathan McKee Art. Yeah, and then just nathanmckee.com. MCKEE.
Yep, Nathan MCKEE. Cool. Yes. Okay, so Instagram's the best, and then and we also said Buy Olympia, BUY Olympia.com.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yes. Cool. Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
It's great getting to catch up. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to cross paths here, in the upcoming months at some point.
Yeah, I'll see you in the future for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Randy. Take care.
All right. How rad was that? Nathan, thank you so much for jumping online. Thanks for sharing stories. I really do appreciate it, man. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and getting to know your story. I love your art and all the rad murals you do. Thank you again for coming out to the kids' school and leaving an impression on all of these crazy elementary school kids up here in the north of LA. Yes, and do not forget, everybody, go check out nathanmckee.com. That's NathanMckee.com. That's his website. That has all the links up to everything where you can buy prints and see his new work. You can also follow him on Instagram at Nathan underscore McKee underscore art. That's MCKEE. So Nathan McKee art is his Instagram handle. And you can also go to buyolympia.com, BUYOLYMPIA, buyolympia.com to buy prints from him and other amazing cool artists. He also has a rad zine press coming up called Small Time Press. And the first issue is coming out this winter, and it's going to talk about arts and records that have influenced rad artists like Russ Pope, High Dutch, Rich Jacobs, Hisham Barucha. I've had Hisham on. I need to get Rich Jacobs. I don't know Russ. And High Dutch, I think we would need a translator. But it would still be rad. It'd be fun to have him on. He also has a art festival in Portland coming up on December 21st called Mall Rats. It's in a defunct mall. I wish I was there. I would go if I was there. It sounds like a lot of fun. All right, Nathan, thank you so much. Thanks for doing so many rad things. Thanks for supporting the community, and everybody else. Do your part. Go out there, support the community. You know, we got a lot going on this year. It's not like, there's anything exciting happening coming up in the next couple weeks. But if you haven't already done so, go vote. Go register. Just, find somebody you like and go vote for them. Why not? Do some research. Spend 5 minutes. I already got my ballot in already. It's a beautiful thing. I was glad I was able to do my part. But this is the big show. This is the big one. Whatever your heart tells you, whatever your brain tells you, whatever your gut tells you, whatever you feel is right for you, go do that. I encourage everybody to go vote. It feels like a big one this year. I mean, it feels scary every year, but this one feels like it means something. So make it mean something for you. Know you did your part, whatever happens. This is the one chance we have to pull the lever and say our piece. So might as well make it a good one. All right, go vote out there. Have fun. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Dress up. Send me pictures of what crazy costumes and crazy parties you're doing. I'm on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And tag me. Tell people you like the show. Tell people you don't like the show. Let me know what you think of it. Find me there on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall. All right. Have a good one. Bye.
I need to know your story. What's your connection to this image? Why do you like this?